Welcome back, YouTube. What's going on? My name is Duress. I'm down here in the corner now, the bottom corner, so we can talk about Lost Origin. Lost Origin came out earlier this year and definitely shook up the expanded meta, though in ways that I was not expecting. So today we are going to go ahead and revisit my set review, my very first set review actually, I guess the first video of the channel I think, and see what I got right and what I got miserably wrong. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We have our honorable mentions. See, nothing really here too special. Kind of nailed it with the whole poison stuff. Not good. Volo. Never saw a Volo and expanded in my life. So, yeah. Just always better, something better. Ace roll, scoop up net. Yeah. Aerodactyl V-Star. Now this, I mean, it's semi-playable in standard, but this ain't standard. We ain't talking about standard. Path on a Pokemon, kind of good. Misses too much for the meta, definitely. It's effective against what is now like one of the more popular decks, like Palkia and like Shadow Rider, obviously, but like it's just again gonna get worse with Scarlet and Violet, as I keep harping on about. So so it's definitely on the money there. Giratina V is not a expanded playable card, and I kind of nailed it with that one. Doesn't matter how much Fusion Strike you see against you. Doesn't matter how much any strike. This ain't it. This is not the answer. Whoa, time to talk about how badly I missed with Giratina V-Star, and I should probably go ahead and pull up some limitless results as well, but Giratina V-Star, I said there's about 8 different ways to build this, and that's not an exaggeration. That is true, but it doesn't mean that those 8 ways are any good. And yeah, there's stuff like Straight Lost Zone, Shadow Rider, Arceus, Gardenia's Eldegoss, but like, and then, of course, Double Dragon Energy, which was the obviously preferred way to do it, because why wouldn't you just play Double Dragon Energy? It's the best energy in the game. I've talked about this in like the meta review, but to put it simply, the problem with Giratina V-Star, or I guess the 2 problems with Giratina V-Star are the following. 1, you are maxed out at 280, which sounds ridiculous saying you're maxed out at 280, but there are so many Pokemon now that have like variable damage. Sylveon can clear 340. Zoroark V-Star can clear 400. And then you have like stuff like Dragonite with all of the damage modifiers, which is hitting 310, but usually it can get up to 340, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with stuff like Leon. So like beyond that, like you can't really have as many damage modifiers and as many like fun tools. I say fun tools, but like whether it's consistency tools, I say tools in more of a general sense, not like specifically tools like bands and float zones and whatever. It just takes too many pieces and takes too many cards moving in too many different zones, one of those zones being unretrievable, for this card to be like consistently good. With that being said, jumping over to Limitless TCG, we have completed, actually no, we want to go to Dex, there we go. Expanded, where is Giratina at this very moment in time? Not in the top 10, that is Garchomp Giratina. We have down here at 37th, so it's been played 3 times, 12 and 13. Yeah, 1, 6, and 3, not bad, but like, again, it simply takes too many pieces for this to be realistically like very, very good. Licky, who's playing a Licky deck? Okay, so yeah, overall Giratina V-Star, I kind of missed on that one, to be honest with you. I think it's still like, maybe it's too early still, but like it really is not putting up the numbers necessary. You have Gumi V and V-Star. I think I was definitely... So the one thing I was blinded by the fact that it has the exact same energy types as ADP, and I don't know why. That was a big mistake, because that makes no sense that you would combine ADP with its relatively low damage output and Gumi V-Star's relatively low damage output. Yeah, I say low. It's 200 damage, and then of course you take 80 less damage from attacks. It just makes no sense. They kind of like work opposite of each other in some sense because of the speed and acceleration of ADP, and then like the slow tankiness of Gumi V-Star. Or I say Gumi V-Star, sorry, Gudra V-Star. Gumi's the better one though. The damage reduction of 80 was like kind of somewhat relevant, but like there were often times when I tried out Gumi V-Star, in like a slower Lost Zone-ish expanded style like deck, like it was not happening. Like I was just getting two-shot like nobody's business. It does not matter if you're taking 80 less if they're doing like 350 a turn. Like it's... And the other thing is, and we're going to get to Fantina, but I do think I need to talk about Fantina right now with Gumi V-Star, Gudra V-Star. Oh my god. It is impossible to play Fantina. Not only do you actually like need your opponent to be playing Vs, but like it's so hard to find the Fantina late game, especially because you probably lost zoned it in the first 2 turns. So yeah, honestly, Dragonite is just better. I'm glad I put the Dragonite in the corner because Dragonite is just much better in terms of a partner. In terms of a partner with ADP, obviously, as well as Palkia. Next up, we have Hisuian Zoroark V-Star, which I don't think I really missed on, and we need to... There's a whole lot here. There's a whole lot here to unpack. I did give it a 5 out of 5, and we need to go ahead and, again, go to Limitless and check on Hisuian Zoroark V-Star. Okay, that's concerning. So a 38% win rate is very poor. It does look like it just got a second somewhere. That's nice, but overall these results are very, very low. So, I mean, here's the thing that I kind of missed. Hisuian Zoroark has some god-awful matchups, some absolutely atrocious matchups. Palkia is not the business. You do not want to see a Palkia on the other side of the battlefield. You don't want to see a Sudowoodo on the other side of the battlefield because that's the end of your game. There are just stuff like a Regidrago. Like you could hate out a Regidrago with the stopping energy, stopping special energy, stopping stadiums. You need your Sky Field, of course. There are just actually a surprisingly large amount of decks that have a good to great matchup against this deck, which I find surprising given its insane damage output. I talked about the fact that I did not think... I talked about the fact that, like, oh, you could do stuff with Skyfield with this. But honestly, I think the more realistic way is to do the Gape Jogba thing. I completely missed the fact about the interactions between, you know, Gengar and Skyfield, which is just you put a Skyfield in play, you battle compress your Gengars, you bring up your Gengars, your Skyfield gets bounced, you bounce all 3 of your Gengars, you play a Skyfield, you bring back all 3 of the Gengars at what is basically no cost, and then you get to stack more damage counters. Had I realized that, I would probably put Gengar at a 2 because that is very, very, very good, and I think will actually be a potential inclusion in some other sort of Skyfield decks. Not ones that currently exist, but if your goal is seriously only to bench 8 Pokemon and have 8 Pokemon benched when you're attacking, there's basically no better option than Gengar. Like it's just so good. But with that being said, like you have such high damage output, which is why this card seems so insane in practice, but there are just so many ways to hate it out. Through abilities, through needing to have a large bench, through damaging yourself. You got to stack those Gengar counters, and when it gets bounced and reset, like you're stacking those Gengar counters again and again, and that is softening stuff up. Of course, you can spread it out on like your one prizers, like your Garbodors, which seems to see a lot of play with the Hisuian Zoroark, but like I don't even know if that's like necessarily the best way of playing it, because you are basically turboing through your deck on the first turn to set up your Garbodors for the second turn, but you have no ability hate for your opponent's first turn. It's just, yeah, it's a lot of pieces that work very well, but in the current metagame don't function optimally, which is why we're seeing it at 38% win rate. We've tried it out on the stream before. Maybe it just needs more experienced pilots. Maybe it just needs different metagame. I'm not sure. I'd give it a 4 at this moment. I think, though I do think that giving it a 5 at that point in time was the correct decision. Especially considering that Shadow Rider Calyrex was a lot more popular. Shadow Rider Calyrex playing stuff like, you know, Silent Labs Lolomux, like Hisuian Zoroark V-Star does not care about that past like the first turn. You're just turbo drawing with the Dens on the first turn and Crobats, and then past that you can use your V-Star power So yeah, I think it was correct to give it a 5 at the time, though now I'd give it like a 4, but like a quickly falling, trending downwards type of 4. Kyurem VMAX, I gave a 2 out of 5, which I think was probably actually, and this is very surprising to me, slightly below where it is now. I think, you know, Palkia is, of course, one of like the mainstays of Expanded right now, like one of the dominant competitive decks. You know, I harped on a lot about the Frostmoth, like Blastoise Archie's style of accelerating energy, but like, of course, the Palkia is just so consistent, and triple Aqua Patch. I say Aqua Patch, but it can go to the active as well. So yeah, this is just a solid inclusion. I feel like people very much underrated it for standard play, which, I mean, I never looked at it for standard play because I don't really play much standard, but for expanded, I was just, I guess from an expanded point of view, I was on the outside looking into standard, like nobody really is talking about this card, but it seems legit. And it has been, like, it's, what is it, 270 damage, right? For if you have 3 waters on there, 300 with a band, and then you can go beyond that in terms of like stacking energy onto Kyurem. So like, it's just been a solid card. I'd bump it up to a 3 at this point. It's just a really, really good acceleration target. So yeah, good job, Kyurem. Magnezone V-Star, nope. Radiant Gardevoir is a 2 out of 5, and I think that is fine. We'll slot into a deck or two, weak to Pokemon V, as I said in my notes, and then only gets worse when Scarlet and Violet comes around. I haven't seen it in Expanded yet. Maybe that's just out of sheer coincidence and luck or whatever, but it's still decent, though I would bump it up to like a high, or sorry, bump it down to a high 1 at this point, seeing as there's really just no, there's just no way to guarantee that your opponent is going to be attacking with a V. So there's just so much better Radiant cards at this point. Obviously, the go-to is something like Radiant Greninja for card draw, or Radiant Charizard for like late game attacks and stuff. So yeah, Radiant Gardevoir I'd probably bump down again to a high 1, and once Scarlet and Violet comes out, we are probably just gonna forget about this card, to be honest with you. Zoroark V and VMAX, that is bulk. Arazu, I was very, very interested in this card, though I think I admitted this at the time, absolutely no idea where you play it. And I think everybody else seems to have agreed, because it has seen no play at this point. It's still a really strong card. Anything that doesn't have a rule box or like non-rule box, I'm kind of interested in. And, you know, in the future, actually, no, in the future, there's pretty solid potential, because if you're trying to evolve, God help you, into stage 2s, you can grab your stage 1s, stuff like that. So I guess it does actually become more relevant once Scarlet and Violet comes out, now that I think about it, which is interesting. Nice. Colress's Experiment. Are you playing a Lost Engine deck? Then you're probably going to play this, but I cannot guarantee you're going to do particularly well given what we have looked at with Giratina and general like Lost Box decks, which have not been doing well. The like one prize or lost type of Lost Box deck. Yeah, it's the main engine for like draw support main engine, as well as filling up the Lost Zone for Lost decks. And I did note that it would be interesting to balance like the counts between this and like actual good real draw support. So yeah, I think you play with the counts, but honestly, it's just not the whole Lost engine. I was super high on, tried it out for about 5 games because I got my Giratina V-Stars pretty early and immediately realized that you do not really have the speed or consistency to really keep up in the expanded metagame. You just have to do too much stuff to achieve your payoffs. Fantina, this is not a 2 out of 5. This is a massive 0 out of 5. That's right. It was your opponent. Your Pokemon take 120 less damage from attacks of your opponent's Pokemon V. Again, anything that says a specific type of rule box is trending downward very quickly, and I should have picked up on the fact that you can really only do this late game. I thought it would be possible to very, very consistently turbo into your deck to the point where you can play this on like turn 2 or 3, but even if you can, it doesn't really matter when it is only focused on Pokemon B. And even when you can, there's a large amount that you've lost on your Fantina to keep a resource you actually need. So yeah, this is a hard miss. Misfortune Sisters, I think it was a 1 out of 5. Just a fine rating. You could play this or you could play Team Rocket's Handiwork. I keep going back and forth on the math, and at this point I don't really care. I'll take one or the other. It's whatever. I'll just take the full art, honestly. But to be serious, like, it's so incredibly dependent upon the general construction of decks in the metagame that sweating the decision between Misfortune Sisters and Team Rocket's Handiwork I don't think is particularly worth it. I think there's more important things to focus on, honestly, in that kind of control deck. Though I would say, like, Team Rocket's Handiwork, if it hits the coins, then it mills the cards, right? Misfortune Sisters is not like that. You can see 5 cards and not discard any of them. That feels really bad, which I've had happen. So yeah, I'd probably just take Team Rocket's Handiwork after my ramblings there. Thornton, that is not a good playable or real card in Expanded. Lost Sweeper, if you're playing Lost Engine still for some reason, and you want to play Tool and or Stadium Removal, then this is your card. You never play this outside of it just to make sure it goes into the Lost Zone, because you can just play something like Field Blower, which is way, way, way better. Mirage Gate. Whoa. I was very high on this card, and my god, did it really just not do the thing as well as I thought it would in Expanded. I was honestly talking about Mirage Gate like how people play Mirage Gate in Standard, just slapping them on goofy cards like Tina Chomp with like insane energy restrictions. Like, of course, people are doing that now with like the amazing rares in Standard, but in Expanded, that is not the business. The whole Lost deck is not consistent enough to, how do you say this? It's not consistent enough at being fast enough to hit your Mirage Gates. And if it doesn't do that, and even sometimes when it does do that, you can get so severely disrupted that you either can't do it or you get your attackers knocked out. So this card is actually like it is just too slow for Expanded, unfortunately. You just have to do too many goofy things with the Lost Engine deck. I put like the Lost Blender thing in there, like, oh my goodness. Lost zoning 2 of your cards in your hand, it just always felt bad. It just always felt bad to draw a card, having such like negative card advantage. And then yeah, stuff like Comfey, like Silent Lab exists. If you get Silent Labbed against like if you're playing Lost Box, like not Giratina VSTAR Lost Box, and you get Silent Labbed, oh boy, you're in a lot of trouble. Your goose is very close to cooked. So yeah, Mirage Gate is not the business, unfortunately. Though I look forward to hopefully visiting the Lost Zone mechanic again at the end of Scarlet and Violet in 3 years, and again convincing myself that the Lost Engine will be good. Let's see. Lost City, that is not a real card. Again, I said Chaotic Swell is a better passive stadium. Good against recycling control, though. I guess that's kind of true, but there's just a lot better things you could do. Lake Acuity, again, just a lot better things you could do in that same style. Rough Seas is just better at healing your Pokemon, though I will say Lake Acuity does reduce rather than heal, which I do like. Reduce like the amount of damage incoming. Or you just play something like Brooklet Hill, which is just way better for both water and fighting. But honestly, like, this is not a real stadium for Expanded. So yeah, 1 out of 5 was, again, very generous, but you know, we like to talk about relevant-ish cards, or cards that appear to look semi-relevant. Banette, that is not a real card for Expanded either. Clefairy, that was more of a meme inclusion. I did play against a Clefairy deck one day, and I did concede to him out of respect because he did the thing. If you do the thing with Clefairy, if you could charge up a Clefairy, and I forget what exactly I was playing. It might have been something like Reggie Drago or something like that. Just like testing before I recorded the video. I was just like, oh, okay. It actually did the thing. But yeah, this is not a real card or deck, and this idea is very fun, but it is very difficult to pull off. And again, there's so much weaknesses. Bad attacks, shutting down abilities, attacks that require specific amounts of, attacks that require specific amounts of energy in certain places, whether it's the graveyard attached to this Pokemon, which is not as bad with Clefairy since you do have 3 attached. Poltergeist for like Mad Party stuff, like, doesn't work against that because you have no Mad Party cards in your graveyard, so no, not a real card at all. But it's fun. Isn't that what's important? Comfey was, I mean, a 2 out of 5. I think this should have been probably, reflecting back on what I thought of the Lost Engine, I think this should have been a 3 out of 5, and maybe Fantina should have been like a 1 out of 5. I think now, though, I think this is actually accurate. I think it is a 2 out of 5. I think the whole Lost Box type of deck is probably like a 2 out of 5 deck. It is not a deck you are particularly comfortable at all taking to a online tournament. Like, you are going to get your cheeks slapped around. But Comfey, I do think has a home in that Giratina style of deck, because you do want to use its flower picking ability to start filling up your Lost Zone. It's, again, like the Acro Bike. Just finding your float stones to switch easier and do all the goofy stuff that you need to do to fill up your Lost Zone. So I think Comfey is like a real card in the sense of, like, it is a real and like necessary inclusion for any Lost Zone deck, whereas like the stuff like Fantina, stuff like Mirage Gate is not, because while they do have very high payoffs, they are either extremely conditional in that, like, the Fantina will not work against a large amount of decks, or the Mirage Gate will just like take too long. So that's kind of like my realignment of all the Lost Zone stuff, if that makes sense. But yeah, I did say in my notes, probably one of the weakest Pokemon that actually make it into the Lost Engine archetype. I guess that's true. And it's extremely slow. Nailed that part. Requires switching. Yes, I did nail that part. And fills up Lost Zone, obviously, because I can read the card. Good analysis. Cramorant. Cramorant is, again, I said, helps one prize racing. If the Lost Engine is a thing, this can go into any deck that utilizes it. So it is an attacker in any Lost Engine type of deck, which is kind of interesting, right? Because you have this whole like package, this whole like draw and payoff package, but then you also have an attacker that goes with this whole, an attacker that requires no energy and is in some way, like, I don't want to say synergizes, but it works very well in tandem with the rest of the deck, because your Pokemon, especially if we're not talking about stuff like Giratina VSTAR, your Pokemon do not have like insane damage output, right? So it's very, very important to have like a low commitment one prizer that does some damage, and this fills that role. So not terribly exciting, though it is a cool card. I mean, I don't know. Free attack is a free attack. 110 is not great. Boosting to 140 even isn't that great, though I guess you could chain 2 together to knock out like a V-Star. But yeah, I think 2 out of 5 is probably where it should be. Hisuian Arcanine was not ever playable in any sense. Hisuian Basculegion, I never saw that. This probably, I would say probably should be a 0, but I do think that like it's at least still a 1. I just think that nobody tried it, which I don't blame them. I still haven't tried it. I don't really know why you would want to, I don't know. It's just like, do you really need to like fix your prize math like that much? So that you want to go like 2, 1, 2, 2. It's potentially interesting, but you are taking up 2 slots at least if you're doing a 1-1 line. But realistically, like if you want to do this, you got to do like at least a 2-2 line, because this deck does not have, like, in a Volcarona deck, you are playing at least like 17, I believe 18 energies is the count from what I remember. So like there are going to be times where like you are either dead drawing like really hard, in which case drawing either a Basculin or a Basculegion just really sucks, and you'd rather just have a Volcarona that you can just attach to, right? And then dump your hand with Zebstrika. But I don't know. It's still kind of interesting considering the fact that you don't actually have to attach to it. That's kind of why. That's kind of what drew me to it, is the fact that it does not take an energy commitment to attack with it. In the same style of attack as the Surging Flames on Volcarona. So yeah. Hisuian Zoroark, the one prizer, was a pretty cool, like what seemed like a pretty cool one prize Pokemon, but for like control stuff, but really just I don't think ever saw any play. Again, it could be one of those things where it's like, you know, not enough people playing, so nobody just ever really tested it. But it's, again, just not terribly focused. I said in my notes, I'm personally not familiar with control archetypes, though I do feel confident that the combination of these attacks, the Hex of Ruin, where it's just at the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon is knocked out. That's for 0 energy. And then bring back, choose one card from your discard pile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. That's a pretty solid combination of attacks. And it would be fun to play around with. Unfortunately, it is a stage 1, though. So that's kind of one of the big, I guess, downsides of the card. And then, the main downside of the card really is that it has to evolve. You really want like stuff like that Bunnelby, where it's just like basic, slam it on the bench, no commitment, or high impact bench sitters like Vileplume, right? 2 out of 5, probably, well, not probably, definitely a little bit too high, but I can live with that because I'm not, not necessarily a control master. Put Magcargo on here as kind of, I don't know. It looked cool. Oh yeah, because you could like Lost Zone all your energy and do cool stuff with Blacephalon and whatnot and Welder onto it. And I mean, 220 damage on a Magcargo, on a one prizer Magcargo is pretty like okay, but Lost zoning 3 energy attached to it is pretty rough. If you are knocking out if you have to knock out 3 2-prizers, right? That is 9 energy lost zoned, which is, whoa, that is a lot of energy getting lost zoned. That's very scary. Yeah, and then our last card was Wailord. That is a big boy. I said, wow, that's a big boy, just like every Wailord, correct. Pretty decent Frostmoth target. I do think that is correct, though I think Kyurem is still much better. It's effectively 230 HP to hit, to 1 hit, and then 260 to 2 hit. And then 240 damage output is solid. Stage 1, oh yeah, because it's, I guess you have to evolve it or whatever. Evolving a one prizer kind of sucks in this metagame, because that Wailmer can just get absolutely demolished. But I don't know. It still seems interesting. Maybe I was subconsciously thinking about Gym Leader Challenge or something, because I would imagine this card is somewhat okay to actively good in that format. But the problem is like setting up a Frostmoth is very difficult, because you need to find the balance of, your Pokemon, your card draw, as well as the obscene amount of energy you're trying to flood onto the board. And oftentimes when your opening hands can be like, a Wailmer, a Snom, and 5 water energy. And you're like, all right, I hope I draw a Research at some point, because this is going to be pretty bad. So yeah, that's about it for Wailord. I think I'd probably bump it. I mean, now I'd bump it down to very close to a 0, but I'm still holding out hope, because it is a Wailord. It is very big, and it has like pretty actual serious damage output. Like, you slap a band on that dude, he's doing 270. You cannot ignore that. You cannot just go around and like snipe off a Deden and just be like, oh, I'll come back to this Wailord later. Like, no, you cannot, like, unless you just like flooded the board with 2 prizers, which I don't know why you would do in some sort of like Wailord deck. You know, this is not, you cannot ignore this dude. He's a big old chunky dude, and you gotta knock out his whole, you gotta knock him out. You gotta knock out the whole thing, the whole 200 HP. So yeah, Lost Origin, I think, honestly, I'm gonna be kind on myself, considering it was my very, very first set review, first video of the channel. The obvious misses, I think, are the entire Lost Engine stuff. Again, to reiterate, it basically just takes too many pieces to move around into too many zones, and one of those zones you cannot get stuff back from. So that's kind of my overall analysis of the Lost Zone stuff. I think Hisuian Zoroark was accurate to a degree for about the first 2 weeks. Again, I totally missed on the build in terms of Gengar Skyfield instead of Gape Jawbog. I did talk about Skyfield, but I thought that would be a Disneyland Christmas miracle type of thing. But it turns out with Gengar, it is actually just disgustingly easy to reset your entire bench. But unfortunately, Hisuian Zoroark V-Star has an incredible amount of poor matchups, which is why we see it at such a low win rate today. Other than that, I don't think there's anything too much more. I would say my biggest hit of the set review, or my biggest, if we're going by hits or misses, this is definitely the best hit. A lot of people, for some reason, were not interested in Kyurem VMAX whatsoever, which I still find very strange how people overlook that, because it has, again, 270 base damage, and has variable damage output, which I think is one of like the key factors in attackers in Pokemon in the expanded meta, is being able to have variable damage output. Which is why I love stuff like Sylveon, stuff like Hisuian Zoroark still, and again, stuff like Kyurem VMAX. So yeah, that'll just about do it for our Lost Origin revisit, and we will be coming back for Scarlet and Violet will be our next set review. Just wrapped up the Crown Zenith set review, so I will be, again, going back to this kind of PowerPoint style presentation, much more formal than the kind of taking a look at the websites of the spoilers, because I'm really excited about Scarlet and Violet. It should be very interesting. We've already got some tools coming out that definitely show some promise. I'm definitely interested to try out, as well as some new supporters and items, but I'm not going to dive into that yet. Getting a little ahead of myself. Need to get the PowerPoint ready. In the meantime, y'all, hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will be back with a new video hopefully very soon. Peace, y'all. Have a good one.